Hello, and welcome to a new episode of DeFi Talks, the podcast where we talk everything tech. I am Ciro, and today I have with me a special guest, Mike from Ricochet. Mike is the founder and a backend developer on the Ricochet protocol. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Ciro.
No problem. So I wanted to jump right in and start talking to you a little bit about Ricochet Exchange and what it is. But to get a better idea of what the project does, can we talk about it in a little bit of simple terms? Like what is the project and what does it do?
Yeah, so the Ricochet Exchange problem was created at the Scaling ETH hackathon, and what it really addressed was the limitation of doing dollar cost averaging on chain using ERC20 transfers. So the problem that Ricochet was solving is that once you're doing, let's say, daily dollar cost averaging on a blockchain network for millions of people, well, now you're talking about millions of transactions a day if you're going to use ERC20 transfers. So what Ricochet does is we use wrapped tokens like wrapped USDC and wrapped DAI to enable the transfer of those tokens to be done in a way that doesn't consume gas per person. And that's done using superfluid super tokens, which, from my understanding, use methods like ERC777, like transfer callbacks and a rebasing operation. So under the hood, the way that I explain it is like Ricochet Exchange solves that problem of scaling dollar cost averaging by transferring the tokens to people in a different method. And that method is done kind of with a rebasing system where people's balances are essentially getting rebased or reindexed higher. So that's like the technical problem that's addressed. And then what we have from like a individual perspective or someone who would use Ricochet Exchange and use this technology is really what we're solving is dollar cost averaging. And traditional dollar cost averaging is done on centralized exchanges. You don't really have any, they don't take advantage of things like yield bearing tokens. You're more or less just taking US dollars out of your bank account every day or every week or every month, however your dollar cost averaging. And then of course the fees, like Coinbase is taking a 1.5% fee in some cases. And they have to take a 1.5% fee to do it because it's very expensive to set up. So that's Ricochet Exchange. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about dollar cost. So I started with Coinbase. I would buy ETH on a monthly basis, and I didn't really feel too good about that because I felt every time there was big movements in the market, I would get nervous and take the money out, like sell my ETH and liquidate. So what specifically does the dollar cost averaging play in this product? Like how are you implementing it, and what is the benefit of dollar cost averaging over just buying like once a month or whatever it is that people want to, however people want to invest?
Right. Yeah. So, I can talk about dollar cost averaging and some of the benefits of it. So, what dollar cost averaging is, let's start there, is it's an investment strategy. It's a way of allocating money to investments that historically performs very, very well. In fact, just sort of this like just dollar cost average into the S&P index over a long period of time. When you compare that with like other strategies, there aren't really that many that actually outperform that kind of a strategy once you adjust it for like risk and things like that. There is one which is actually what's called portfolio rebalancing, which we would like to get into in terms of being able to stream money around, where you're constantly rebalancing your percent allocations. But so the DCA strategy, as we say, dollar cost averaging, is a way of investing. So that's the first thing. Now, as far as how does Ricochet do it? Well, what we end up doing is we actually don't give people the option to specify whether they want to do it daily, weekly, monthly. When you use Coinbase, when you set it up, let's say you set it up on a Friday at 7 p.m. to do weekly dollar cost averaging. Well, now it's going to buy every Friday at 7 p.m., like just like clockwork. At least that's my understanding of the product. That's been my experience. And Cash App with Bitcoin dollar cost averaging, I've experienced the same thing where it's like if I set it up on a Tuesday, well now it's going to buy every Tuesday. Well, what Ricochet Exchange is doing is we're basically doing the exchange every 15 minutes. And for the most part, the reason we do that is because we want to get to real time. We want to have like you're getting it like you're sending you're transferring the money every second. You're getting the transfer back every second, and we will get there. But for now, what we're doing is this what I would call like a micro batching. And one of the benefits of that is just that you're not getting the same you're not buying at the same time every week. Like you might in your head have this idea that buying every Friday historically does really well. But I'm pretty sure that, and maybe I need to go to get the numbers, but I'm pretty sure if you just buy all week, every 15 minutes all week, you're going to do almost just as good because you're going to get the average price over the week rather than
So
whatever.
immediately what comes to mind when you say that is let's say Coinbase. I won't like use the company as an example because I don't think they've done anything wrong. But if most users are doing these purchases every Friday at 7 p.m., then Coinbase has access to this information that, or
That's
any
right.
other company would have access to information that they could manipulate. Not saying that Coinbase does any of that. Just a thought
Forget about
experiment.
manipulation. They would just sell that, right? They're like, hey, we have order. It's pay for order flow, which is like what Robinhood and Citadel and all these people are up to. Which is like Coinbase knows every Friday we have to buy 1 million Bitcoin, right, or whatever, right? So they know ahead of time that they're going to be buying this amount on these days. And when you have that kind of situation, then you have knowledge that's very useful and valuable. So I don't necessarily know if they could manipulate or they even would engage in any kind of manipulation. What they would do is they would just have agreements to sell, the analytics around that. At least that's how from my, I don't know if they actually do that, and I don't have anyone
Yeah,
that.
like we're not throwing any blame
Well,
here.
you
Just
see what I'm
thought
saying, which is
experiments onto the
it's a
limitations.
privacy thing too, which is like when you go on there and you say I want to buy Bitcoin every week. You're giving away a lot of information to them, right? Like about what you want to do, and that information, regardless of whether it's sold or whatever, right? It's leaked, right? And you don't with Ricochet Exchange, you don't need to leak that information because everybody buys every 15 minutes. Like everyone is basically sending money into the contract, and every 15 minutes, whatever they've sent in gets swapped and sent back to them. And
That does make a lot of sense.
and as a result, every week you're basically getting the average price for the week, right? And I think if people change their request to Coinbase to rather than saying, "Can you give me the price every Friday at 7 p.m." to just say, "Can you give me the average price for the week?" I think that just feels like a better deal, right? And also it doesn't leak that like privacy of every Friday we're going to be swapping X $1 million to ETH for people. Um,
That
so yeah,
definitely makes sense. Yeah. So I can see that some of the benefits of the protocol would be one, decreasing risk over time because you're buying at such like
that's right.
close times, and two is by kind of anonymizing this process, or not anonymizing, but I would say not leaking out any information
Yeah,
that could be used against users.
right, because it's not about an enemy, it's about market signaling, right? So like when someone goes into a limit order book and says, "I want to sell $1 million worth of ETH, like at this price, like what is it today? It's like 1,600. I want to sell $1 million worth of ETH at 2,000." That creates a market signal, and the market sees that and is like, "Oh, somebody wants to
I
sell."
see.
Right. But so same thing when you go there. It's like Coinbase, you're leaking the information that you want to buy to them. And again, like I'm a huge fan of Coinbase. I know people that work there, and I don't think they're doing anything malicious with it, but it would be in their financial interest to figure out a way to monetize that information so long as their user agreements are
Are
clear that,
upheld.
hey,
Yeah.
yeah, right, or it's clear that like, hey, we're gonna take their buying and selling habits and sell that or whatever they say. Um,
There's one more big advantage to using Ricochet that I can think of at the top of my head, but I think we need to like lay it down in layman terms. We are able to stream into yield-bearing assets.
that's right.
For the people that don't know, what is a yield-bearing asset?
Yeah, so the first innovation I talked about at Ricochet was the idea of the block space efficiency and the reduction in the amount of gas. The second innovation in Ricochet is this idea that the capital that you're setting aside to dollar cost average is just sitting there. Whether you're using Coinbase, it's sitting in your bank and Coinbase is drawing it out of your bank, but it's just sitting there idle. So when you and then when you buy ETH or you buy a Bitcoin, the Bitcoin you receive in Coinbase is basically just idle as well. Everything is just not earning anything. So there's a bit of capital inefficiency when you're doing dollar cost averaging, and so in crypto we have the yield bearing tokens, right? You have Aave USDC, which yields maybe 1 or 2%. You have Compound USDC, and then you have more exotic tokens like 3Curve, which is a liquidity pool position between the three main stablecoins, DAI, USDC, and USDT. And so you have all of these places in DeFi that would be considered yield bearing tokens. And so the general classes of yield bearing tokens are like liquidity pool tokens are generally considered yield bearing tokens. And then you also have, borrow lending market tokens, which is like deposits at Aave. It's like AUSDC. And then the other interesting thing about yield bearing tokens is you can layer these things together. So like for example, on Polygon and Curve, you have Aave Matic 3Curve. And what that is that's a stablecoin liquidity pool that has Aave DAI, Aave USDC, and Aave USDT. And as a result, you're earning trading fees. That's part of the yield. And you're also earning interest on the Aave tokens that are in the pool. So you're like layering the interest. So all is to say, like when we think about dollar cost averaging, we're just at Ricochet going to raise the bar and say it's not just about buying spot ETH or spot Bitcoin with dollars and stable coins. It's all about how quick getting your money into a yield bearing token, a safe. Hopefully, like we evaluate which ones we're listing, and we're not going to list like something like UST. Which, by the way, Ciro, you can attest that I was always a skeptic of that system.
Yeah,
But
I recall having conversations with you and we discussed
yeah,
the instability of that kind of yield that they were offering,
right,
which kind of leads me into a question that I didn't really have planned, but it does come to mind. So
right.
when we are trying to put these markets up where people can earn yield, how are we controlling that process to ensure that we only get the most stable, most
Right.
secure assets?
Sure. So it comes down the way that we would really do play this out is the way, I like to model things after successful projects, and Yearn has what are called strategies or strategists. Yearn makes vaults where you can put your money in. They do yield aggregation. They do it really well. And the strategists basically are these people who create these different strategies, and the strategies don't immediately get listed on the main Yearn page. Instead, they have this like experimental section where things sort of burn in. But anyway, so speaking in terms of Ricochet, the way that it's done today is I am just using my expertise to technically screen things. So like we've tried, and I'm also using my expertise to monitor the things that we deploy to make sure they're working. So I'll go through a history of the yield bearing things that we've done and just tell you about the tech, like see where I'm coming from. So the first one was Sushi liquidity pool tokens. And really just, my technical experience is Sushi is a fork of Uniswap. It's pretty durable. And these yield bearing tokens, these liquidity pool tokens earn yields that are pretty attractive. I think at the time we were talking about ETH USDC pool was earning like 20%, and that 20% was coming in as Sushi and Matic. And so the way that the pool worked on, or the market worked on Ricochet Exchange, was you stream USDC into it, you get back ETH USDC liquidity pool tokens from SushiSwap, but you also receive every 15 minutes the Sushi and the Matic rewards, that 20% yield that's coming back to you. So it's a combination in that experience. The reason that pool was selected, ETH USDC, was a combination of it was a stable project. I think that it's based on stable tech, and it's an investment that is probably not going to lead to a lot of impermanent loss because it's not like you're pairing two very volatile assets. You're pairing USDC ETH. Historically, that pool doesn't have a ton of impermanent loss. And then there's a very attractive yield, which was like it was definitely over 20% when we started, but very quickly, as it does, it came down to 20%, and then down to, I think, when we finally delisted it because Obviously, liquidity pool tokens were not very good investments because there's nothing saves you when ETH goes down 60%. Um, so when we were done with it and delisted it, I think I remember seeing it at like 15 or something. But imagine
That
that. Like we had it listed for like 5 months. You could have been accumulating ETH and USDC. Your liquidity pool tokens of ETH USDC would be down less. You would have lost less money holding that rather than ETH. You still would have lost money, but you would have lost less than if you're just holding 100% ETH. And then, the 20% yield, you could have collected that, let's say on average it was maybe 15%. You're still collecting that yield. It's pretty good. And it comes in as Sushi and Matic. And because, it's Ricochet Exchange, you can just redirect those Sushi and Matic tokens as soon as you get them. You can redirect them and sell them for USDC and something stable. You can
it
redirect it
makes a
into
lot of
Bitcoin.
sense. That makes me feel a lot better about like the overall stability of the project, because it seems
Yeah,
like there is a lot of care going into selection and also
right.
monitoring over time. But let's talk about the future, because I think we have a pretty good idea of what Ricochet does. Where do you see this heading in the future? What are some upcoming things that we should look forward to?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, in my mind, like what's happening here is like Ricochet started as a dollar cost averaging tool, and it was made for buying spot. So it was USDC to ETH, USDC to wrap Bitcoin, DAI to Matic. Those were the market. Those are the types of markets we supported. But going forward, it's going to be a yield aggregator platform, and just the onboarding mechanism will be done with like a streaming process. So, it's basically designed for people who understand the value in dollar cost averaging, not just the how not just that it's a wise investment strategy, but I promise you the real advantage is psychological. When you know that I'm just always buying, I'm making, whatever, after all said and done every month, I have $100 left, and I'm just, dollar cost averaging $50 a month into ETH and $50 a month into Bitcoin. And then you just do that and you just make sure that there's $500 there every month going into this, then you're going to sleep very, very soundly at night, right? If you are doing that, like every month I'm streaming $500, and then when ETH goes up 10%, I just market sell it on Uniswap, you're not gonna have a good time. But if you're just like, if you're just dollar cost averaging, if you're being a wise investor and understand buy and hold, then you're gonna feel very good about doing this.
this makes a lot of sense to me, because one of the biggest problems I've noticed in myself and other people who got into investing, especially during the 2019-2021 cycle, is that you end up spending a lot of time checking how much you have, if it went up, if it went down. And I see that it's very inefficient, because the money or whatever you earn is not equal to the amount of stress and time you put into monitoring it and
Right.
like checking on it all the time.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, think about when you like you're just like, oh, I'm paying a 1.5% fee on Coinbase to do this trade. Well, it's like, yeah, that, and you also are spending maybe however many hours of your time led up to that trade. And then also you're spending however many hours or whatever you spend thinking and monitoring that trade. So like Ricochet's in the future, like we're not really, it can be used for trading, and I see people using the platform for trading today, and they're entering trades like, I'm gonna dollar cost average for like 2 weeks, and then I'm gonna dollar cost average out over the course of a week. So I see activity like that on the platform, but most of the volume is just like these people. What we really want is people to be using the platform as a savings mechanism. Obviously it's a little different than just saving cash in your account. You're saving in these investment products that are available, these things that are available on these permissionless networks, right? You're able to select from a global basket of different things that you would like to hold. So yeah, I mean, in the future, it's also just like, we're not going to offer spot is probably not going to be what we offer. If anything, we'll probably offer spot for free. Spot dollar cost averaging is a free service. And just to, people who want to do that can use it for free. And there's no one can really compete with us on free. And then all of what we do will be yield bearing, and we'll take half a percent fee, the 0.5% fee on the yield bearing swaps.
That
So
gives everybody a little bit of something. So I know a lot of people are not really bearing assets or experimental tokens, so
That's
they can
right.
have something that's more stable and more
Yep.
just
And
logical. And then we have people that want to experiment with this kind of stuff, and you offer them a great yield and also a great process.
yeah, that's right. The other thing is sort of thinking about that. We people, we can offer no fees on some of the markets, and because we have a token, and there are other ways that we can figure out to fund these spot non-spot markets until the yield bearing markets take off and really generate fees. Because the reality is, like, some of these yield bearing products, it makes sense for us to split some of the rewards. Like when we're automatically harvesting the tokens for you, or I should say claim. Since Sushi Swap fell out of fashion, the new term, I think, is, well, anyway, I think it was claim all the time, but harvest was always the sushi. So these auto claiming events where the tokens, we're just claiming these curve tokens or these Matic subsidies or whatever it is, and distributing them into your wallet. There's a lot of value in that because we're saving you from potentially pulling your hardware wallet out, going to the website, connecting, executing the transaction, and then figuring out what you're going to do with the tokens now that you have them. And on top of all of that, your time. I always just forget about the gas fees. I just think about how long it takes your time to do these things and energy. But yeah, on top of that, you're going to pay the gas fee. Whereas on our auto claiming, the gas fee gets socialized across everyone, and the gas fee does not grow as more people are involved. Going back to the
That's
scaling.
Isn't that one of the benefits of Polygon as well, that makes the gas fee so insignificant in comparison to mainnet?
Well, I mean, you can't think about that way when you think about gas fees. Like gas fees are in units of gas units or in units of whey. And you need to be thinking about how much whey are you spending to do this because you have to do it on every chain. It has to be done on every chain. And you can't guarantee that on this chain you're always going to have cheap gas. In fact, there are times where the wallets that fund the keepers for Gelato, which is how Ricochet uses Gelato to automate the 15-minute distributions. Those wallets will just get drained overnight because someone did a drop on Polygon. So it doesn't matter how the argument of like cheap gas on this network is helpful for this solution because we need to spend a lot of gas. That's probably gonna, as gas kind of normalizes across all the chains, which I think it might. I don't think that you can build a system around the system, and that's how other DCA applications are doing it. Like they're not on mainnet because they know, well, maybe they're on mainnet, but on mainnet they're going to be spending to do these transfers and these swaps. They're going to be spending a lot in gas, and it doesn't matter how much the gas is. I'm talking about gas units. They're going to be spending a lot because they have to do one swap for everyone. Um, so yeah, it's more what you said was like it's Polygon that enables this to happen, and that's not 100% true. It's or cheap transactions on Polygon enables this to happen. What really enables this to happen is the not using ERC20 and using ERC777 and using these wrap tokens that are super tokens and have this capability of being transferred using this reindexing or rebasing method, as opposed to the other method.
So, question for you, because I've known you for a while and I see that you have put in a lot of time into running this protocol. I kind of wanted to ask, what kind of struggles have you personally came up with when running this, and how did you deal with them?
Um, yeah, I mean that's a good question. I mean the initial build of Ricochet Exchange at the hackathon worked. And so technically getting the system to work was not a challenge at all, actually. Getting the system to be durable and work, flawlessly is a challenge, right? We're dealing with a new tech here. Like the Superfluid protocol is not that old. I was the first person to launch an app, so like I was sort of walking, the structure, to figure out where, if it's stable. And obviously there are some like, potholes, unexpected behavior when working with the protocol. So, once it was working, operating it, right? Because you don't just like, I think one of my struggles is people showing up thinking that they can just like drop some code and earn some, rewards for their contribution. But the challenge is once you have the contract working and you've tested it and you see that it works, you have to go out and operate it in the real world. And the challenge is once you go out there and operate it, you learn about all these other things, right? And a lot of those challenges around operating it were just like edge cases that we just didn't have tests for. Or like the contract behave the protocol, the superfluid protocol has this behavior that wasn't expected. Um, and so those kinds of things were a challenge just to sort them out and figure out what's really the problem. One case I thought I found the problem because I'm not a superfluid expert. I thought I found the problem, but I didn't. And there was, the problem was a little bit more involved than I would have probably been able to figure out. So yeah, so that's the main challenge. Now there's other challenges around like, we've been doing this for a year, right? So I don't, I'm not sure how many people, a lot of people make these projects, a lot of founders build things, but to stick around and operate something for an entire year, and this isn't my first time operating a smart contract network. Like I operated, proof of stake pooling contracts for Tellor, and that I did that almost for 2 years consecutively. Around when the markets crashed, though, I stopped for like 3 months because it was like, well, everything just blew up. This was like March 2020, I think. Um,
To
so that,
recap, just
yeah, go ahead.
so I'm sure I got it right. So running like when you're working with new technology, which is something that I personally haven't done because most of the stuff I work with is on front ends and it's pretty simple. There's a lot of this like you have to find the problems, you have to fix the problems, you have to talk to the protocols that have these issues in the first place. And that seems like it takes a lot of time. Is there anything that you do to keep yourself balanced and healthy and able to keep running this continuously nonstop?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, like I've taught at university on programming and things like that, and it's funny because, some of my students will ask me for like tips going into, job interviews that require coding and stuff, and like I have sort of developed pretty efficient ability to write code. And one of the main things that I do is I have on my editor, I have like a activity tracker. It's called Waka Time, and so I'm very tuned in to how much time I'm spending in my editor. I do a lot in there beyond just coding. Like I'll do README files. And if you've seen how I work before, I do a lot of architecture and a lot of prep before I even move into the coding. So, that's one of the things I do is just keep an eye on your time. Like if you think you're working and, then it shows. And I like that because I can see, oh, look, I did the work yesterday, right? I feel it. Not only do I feel like I got one of those tasks done, but also, I can see that I was active and here's what I was active on, right? I was active on JavaScript and I was active on Solidity. And I'm actually, putting in the time. A lot of it is just putting in the time. So that's the first thing is having some analytics around how you work. Also, the other place I source analytics from is GitHub. Like my the cross diagram on GitHub as far as like, do you mostly make commits or pull requests or issues or I forget what the other one is, but that I try to keep kind of balanced too. So I'm not just like all I'm doing is coding. A lot of what I do is commenting on issues and reviewing pull requests. So that's the first thing is the numbers. The other
From
thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just don't want to lose my because one of the things I noticed most about you is you're able to contribute to such a wide range of things, despite maybe not being an expert in one specific thing or another. You're able to contribute meaningfully and keep things safe and functional. And that personally for me is not so easy, especially when I'm dealing with things that I haven't worked much with before. Before we go on to the back to the health thing, is there any advice you can give in that regard?
Yeah, put in the time. Like the only reason I'm as good as I am is because I put in the hours and I've seen so much. So, you get to a point where it's like, you're building things where the only thing that you have is like a set of docs. You can't just like Google how do I do this, how do I do that, right? We're not building NFTs and ERC20 tokens here. We're building brand new things. So you have to just have a lot of time invested in this, right? I've been doing this full time since 2019. I've been working in it even longer than that. and at this point, and computer engineering and teaching, and so I've put in all the time. So when it comes to things I haven't seen before, I've encountered that situation 100,000 times, just like brand new thing, and figure it out. So that's how you get better. There is no substitute for experience and putting in the time. And that's again why the main thing I think to keeping, keep going is just like, keep track of the your own work, and like, you keep track of what where you have momentum and when you have momentum. And then also getting, sort of transition back to keeping yourself healthy, and operating something like this consistently for a year. A lot of it has to do with just like when to work, which is like I work from in the morning until like about lunchtime, and I'm shot. Like after that, your brain's just sort of dead. So to think I'm gonna like come back in the afternoon and do a bunch of coding is not wise. And so just sort of self-selecting when to work, and when to get what done. Because in the afternoon, obviously, you can go answer a bunch of emails, and I can go follow up with the million Discord messages I'm getting from people. And yeah, I mean, after that's sort of another thing, is just like selecting when you work. I also just do think like working out and eating right is critical. Like, I actually don't drink coffee anymore. I cut out coffee about a month and a half ago, and I promise you, it's one of the best situations. And I did it because I was just sort of keeping in tune with like the health, and the sleep is very important, and sleep, a lot of what you eat and what you do during the day goes into how well you sleep. So having caffeine in the morning, and at this point I don't even like, if I do want something, I have like black tea, but I don't even, at this point, I don't even really drink that. I'd probably drink that on
This
like a
makes
Friday
this
afternoon.
makes a lot of
So I'm gonna be
sense.
up late. So, and that's
So
a
this
huge,
is
yeah, go ahead. And then also
sorry to
working
cut you
out,
off.
I would say like doing some kind of physical fitness, like have a standing desk, raise your
I was
monitor up,
gonna say that because so recently I've
have an
been talking to a lot of
ergonomic keyboard and mouse,
yeah,
change your life.
good setup.
Especially if you've ever had any wrist pain on your mouse hand, you have to go out and buy a little pad that sits below your mouse and holds your wrist, because if you don't,
Yeah,
you're gonna have long-term damage. It's like, just like when you see people go play sports. The people who go play sports wear augmentation to protect different parts of their body. And I agree, if you're gonna be sitting, like I'm sitting at my computer coding for like, sometimes 5 hours a day straight in my active editor, which, obviously that's more than 5 hours if you're just talking about 5 hours of active time typing in the editor. So if you're going to sit there and do that, you want to be standing up. You don't want to be looking down at a monitor. You want to be looking straight ahead, and you want to have your, wrists, taken care of, and not, in these weird positions that are going to cause long-term damage. There's nothing worse
recently I have
than
been
trying to
talking.
code while your hands hurt. Like I've been in that situation, and that's why I got this thing, and it goes away. You can, if you have
So
wrist pain,
let
and
me
you get one, it goes
let me
away.
recap that. Um, just to make sure that I got everything, because I've been talking to a lot of developers recently and trying to figure out what the most ideal way to work is, because a lot of time goes wasted doing things that aren't necessarily meaningful. And one of the comments I get the most is people have become very stagnant in their lifestyles as developers. Like they spend a lot
Yeah,
of time sitting down, they spend a lot of time physically like not moving and just thinking. And I think that needs to be balanced out with more physical activities. It needs to be balanced out
yeah.
with things that are not digital. There's a great benefit to that we're not seeing. So your advice was to spend more time focusing on your health, getting data around your work, and making sure to choose the right time to work, whatever that is for you, right?
Whatever that is for you. And if you're, like I'm not, I've been out of college for almost a decade, and like when I was out of college immediately, like my time to work was not 8 to 11 a.m., right? The time that I would work when I got out of college was like 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. One, because I was working, and then two, because I like, I had like the mental energy to do it, right? If you're just out of college, you're just still like a student, you got a lot of energy. So, working after you're working on something that you're passionate about is like no big deal. Now, obviously, it's not just, these aren't just passion projects for me. Like these are things I'm like all in on. So like take it, and I'm about a lot older and more experienced, and so I know what works and what doesn't work, and to sort of develop this. But like, yeah, like my day, because I'm coding and I understand that that's like, kind of a deep activity and it requires a lot of energy and straining and also physically demanding just because of the positioning of your body in front of this thing that you're going to basically be holding and connected to. Yeah, it's really important about everything else just to keep at the peak. Otherwise you're still going to make progress. It's just not going to be as efficient. You can just, it's fine if you want to sit there and pound Red Bull and put in 12-hour days, but it's also fine if you want to, accomplish the same thing in 4 hours, go to the gym in the afternoon, and then just answer and socialize with people for the most part on Discord in the afternoon, right? That's totally fine.
That's golden advice. I'm really conscious of your time, and you've been giving really good advice. But I have two more questions
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
I'd like to ask. So I know that Ricochet is under a open source business license, and that the code is available for anybody to read and to learn from. I know that Ricochet was built by a lot of people who are just like non-committed, let's say contributors that are there and then they go, and that also probably takes a lot of energy to manage. Could you give us a peek behind the process of like why did you open source this and why did you spend so much time allowing anybody to contribute?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just being altruistic in that way and like letting people participate and training up people who are here. Most of the early version of Ricochet before all the contributors showed up was me paying contractors on Upwork to build the front end. We had a very rudimentary front end at the hackathon, and it was a fork of another code base I had created. Didn't even use React. It was just pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So one of the challenges was like once people did show up, a lot of them are not professionals. They're on their way to becoming professionals in the space. That's not true. They're all mostly professionals. We do get a lot of students, which might not fall in that category, but they're working in a Web 2 job or they're doing something else. And they're kind of, this is not, this is sort of something they do after work, right? That 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. slot for them. So what was hard is that, of course, they're not contractors on Upwork that are experts in this. So, when we communicate ideas about what we're going to do, we don't always know how. And so people look into it and then they like don't know how to test it. And so it's a lot of my time just in DMs with people individually, kind of going over like, yeah, do this and then try this. And what's the error you're getting and this sort of stuff. So, and I do that just because I'm, trying to do net positive for the space, create opportunities for people. And I know that if I provide some training and they go out and they, do well, in a year or 2 years from now, when Ricochet turns into this, Uniswap Labs style thing, Uniswap and Uniswap Labs, those people will be back, right? Because they had a good experience here. And so that's sort of that's sort of the challenge and the reason why chose to do what I did is really just, I set Ricochet up in a way that anyone who participates will benefit really, so whether that be you participate by streaming or by dollar cost averaging and you get some RIC tokens and that's how you benefit, or you participate in the development and you skill yourself up and you get something you can go put on your resume. Like that's to me very important. But
And
like
I want
when I go
to
back and
give a
forth,
big
I do go back to just using like the reality is like using contractors is a far more efficient use of capital. And like I'm really happy that Raid Guild is like interested in Ricochet. They liked the conversation we had and they're willing to help us because I lost my contractors when Russia they deplatformed. I just was working with the Russian contractors. They were the best I found. It was an agency, but they got deplatformed from Upwork. And I just don't without the controls that Upwork has in place around contractors and escrow. I don't think that they'll deliver the same quality of work at the same price. So and then also like there's the whole taboo about Russia right now, especially if you're in the U.S. or whatever. So for that reason, for a while, it was just like in this limbo of like, oh crap, like I can't use those guys for the really difficult things. And I started working with people here to do some of the difficult things, and we got a lot done. But I am very excited to have Radial come in because we've gotten to this point where, like, one of the other challenges of having all these contributors is that they just pile stuff in, and over time, the application has grown very significantly. And so I'm excited to work again with Raid Guild and them, and they have a lot of experience to basically build the new interface. And then once that interface is built and the foundation is laid, then obviously everyone can come back in and contribute. But yeah, so that's a challenge too, which is like as we contribute to this code base, it sort of diverges from this, the initial organization, and we get all this other stuff going on. And then it becomes harder to add things because you have to go make changes in many places. But again,
Yeah,
like
this
it's
sounds like
good.
a classical problem that
It
code
is.
bases like over time grow. And I just wanted to comment on. So I am one of the people that has contributed on Ricochet, and I am very grateful for that opportunity. It has been a very big net benefit to my life, and I know other people in the protocol have also experienced the same things I did. So I just want to give a big thank you to you and to the DAO because it's been a great ride, and I really look forward to seeing what happens with it. To wrap things up, I just wanted to give you some space if you want to shout anything out, if you want to just mention anything that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about.
I mean, I guess the only other thing would be about the referral system in Ricochet. Like there's this idea of business development and like, going out on Twitter and Medium and this, that, and the other thing. And like, like we had a, team of people that were like, we should do a referral system. And, I went in and architected this referral system, and we have it today. It's a 50-50 split on the fees that the DAO takes when any of the volume you refer. And that's how we've been developing this business. When we talk to companies like Ledger, and there's like Simple Trade, or sorry, Easy Trader. I might be getting their name wrong. I apologize, but they're a Chrome plugin that interacts with centralized and decentralized exchanges, gives you a view of your wallet. They want a dollar cost averaging system in their product, and they don't want to necessarily build that out themselves. And so the referral system is probably, one of the best things Ricochet has going for it in terms of developing its business, because it's led to us having, like Ricochet is in Ledger Live. And it's like the top app when you open up the Discover section. It's the first one there. So what I would say too is anyone listening to this recording who's hearing this referral system thing, if you have an audience, or if you like dollar cost averaging and want to get people into dollar cost averaging, there is a path to turning that into a passive income for you, if you can, sort of refer some people who become long-term users.
I've personally tried this, and I can guarantee that it actually does work.
Yeah,
Whenever I meet somebody that might be interested in the DeFi Web3 space, I invite them over with the links. It's a smooth process, and I actually do believe that with time, it could be a very, very beneficial feature. And I mean, it's beneficial from the start, but
right.
the fact that you don't have to interact past the point of just inviting somebody and you keep earning indefinitely is just incredible.
Yeah, and then also our referral system is on chain, so the association of that wallet with your wallet is going to be in all the products. So it's not like if we roll out a new product, we need to like refer people, we'll just continue to credit you. Can't guarantee it'll always be a 50-50 split between the DAO and the affiliate. That's just where, we're starting. Over time, we need to carve out some of the fee to go to the keepers. And so, over time it might, get smaller, but the fee there will always be a share for people who you referred. We will always have an affiliate carve out in the fee.
So, hearing that, guys, just go down in the description and you will find a referral for my referral fee. You'll also find links to Mike's social media and to the protocol documentation if you want to learn more. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you so much, Mike, for being here. And this has been another episode of DeFi Talks. We'll see you next time.